When my parents asked me what I wanted to do with my life, I said I'd never be a pilot or a mechanic. And and of course, God has a sense of humor, so he turned that all the way around, and now he turned me into a pilot and a mechanic. I'm Bobby Kulp. I grew up in the central Wisconsin area in Stratford. When I was younger, I'd flown before, and I got to the point where I really didn't want to fly. I got sick doing it. I also, when I was 16, was working on my own car and breaking things and not doing very well at it. So when I was 16, a missionary came to our church and kind of presented. He was from Indonesia. He flew into short strips in the middle of nowhere, flying goods and Bibles to people in need and missionaries out to remote areas. Kind of listening to what he was saying and seeing some of the ways he could help others, that kind of jogged my perception about not being a pilot or a mechanic. It was more of I could actually do that if it was for the right reasons, if it was to serve others and serve God. And that kind of started the whole process.
You know, a lot of people, when we're talking to them about it, they're just like, this is so crazy. Why are you going? You're, taking your, child and you're moving to a different country. We know this is what God has for us, and we wouldn't want to do anything else.
The one thing that really got my attention was flying in the first translation of New Testament to a tribe who never had the Bible in their language before. They'd just been told it by the missionaries, but never had it in their language. That was like, wow, that's really useful, And then the missionaries there, if they need support, we can have them support in a half hour instead of days. So that need is very real in parts of the world where infrastructure just isn't there. We're kind of a lifeline. That's what they call it. They call it the lifeline, and we're a half hour away. And then when you're there, you can bring in mail. You can bring in things that help them stay there. And then one of the things that I think of and that I want to work on is to be that encouragement, to be flying in and here's your goods, and what can we pray about?
The place we'll be living will be in a community in Kenya, and so there's other moms in the area. There's a Kenyan homeschool group. There are a lot of different opportunities to minister in the area. Some of the pilots' wives have worked with straight women. Some of them work with kids in the area doing education, different health-related education. I know they do in some areas.
Most missionary aviation organizations require a certain number of flight hours, flight experience, and then almost all of them require you to be a mechanic as well. They feel that when you're in the bush and you have little support, you want to be able to fix the airplane you're flying. There's lots of different levels of licensing, so that the missionary aviation organizations require a commercial pilot's license. That's about 3 licenses into being a pilot. So I had to get all of those. So I started with private pilot, and then kind of switched gears and went to maintenance school for a year, to actually a missionary-oriented maintenance school. Once you have all those qualifications, every missionary aviation organization requires you to go through an evaluation process. And most of them are 1 to 2 weeks long. The one I did was 2 weeks. They want to know, what are your skills, and are you ready to go overseas and be a missionary pilot and mechanic? So we just passed that evaluation in November, and it was a very stressful evaluation. But at the end, we came out with an unconditional letter of acceptance to our organization. AMER is the Aviation Department of Africa Inland Mission, or AIM. And what they do is they serve Africa Inland Mission's missionaries with aviation, as well as 50 other organizations.
AIM is an international ministry, so they have people their missionaries are from all over the world.
AMER has 2 bases. One's in Nairobi, Kenya. That's where we'll be based for the first year at least, most likely longer than that. And the second base is in Arua, Uganda. And through those 2 bases, they can go into South Sudan and Central African Republic, a lot of the countries that have less infrastructure and really have a need for aviation. That's kind of their range. That whole geographical area, you could plant the United States right on it and it would fit. So it's huge. So we're about a year and a half out from actually going overseas and going to Kenya. In the next year, we're working on raising financial and prayer support. Once we get to March of 2022, about 3 months before we actually go overseas, we're going to go to 3 months of training. In the training, I'll learn more specifics on how to be a bush pilot and to work overseas. And Sarah will learn some extra skills, and we'll learn how to work cross-culturally.
So we have several online classes we have to do. We have probably a nice stack of books we have to read. Stuff ranging from, how to have a solid relationship with God to how to serve with people from a multi-ethnic, multinational team.
In July of 2022, we're going to launch to Africa. So our deadline for raising support is pretty much February of 2022. We need to be fully supported before we start training. So we're looking for God to move in people's hearts to help us with that. And there's no other way it's going to happen. I mean, you look at those numbers and there's no way that happens without God.
We actually got connected to a missionary family that lives here in Wausau that served with AIM. They would use AIM Air, and they've been talking about how when they first went, the people group they were seeing was considered unreached. And now they're home because this people group is reached. They have a church, and the church is planting other churches. And that, to me, to be part of that is just crazy exciting.
The verse that we have for our kind of our motto is 2 Corinthians 12:9. My grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. For both of us, we've had moments in our lives where God has shown us how weak we are. We've seen how weak we are, but His strength has worked out in every one of those moments. Because I'm a human like anybody else. I have all sorts of faults, and God somehow was working through me to accomplish this. At the time when I was in the trenches slogging it out, it didn't feel like anything was happening. Nothing was moving forward. My personal view of accomplishment and drive wasn't getting fulfilled. I got kind of wrapped up in what was going on. But I look back at all of it and I see God is for every step He's been there.
We've been in this process, since before we got married, and we've been married for almost 6 years. So it's finally happening, and I think that for me is a big part of why it's so exciting.
God working through you is so much more powerful than you on your own. I have a lot of fear about it, but I know that God is going to work powerfully through us. I don't know how that's going to look, but I know He will.